Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Commission regular meeting, June 8th, 2021. Due to COVID, remote public participation, in lieu of attending the meeting in person, members of the public can submit public comments via email or address the Planning Commission by telephone using methods described below. Members of the public can submit public comments to the city clerk via email at planning_dept at westcovina.org. The subject line should specify oral communications -3/25/2021. Please include your full name and address in your email. All emails received by 5 p.m. on the day of the commission meeting will be posted to the city's website under current meetings, agendas, and provided to the Planning Commission prior to the meeting. No comments will be read out loud during the meeting. All comments received by the start of the meeting will be made part of the official public record of the meeting. Public comments addressing the Commission. Any person wishing to address the Planning Commission on any matter listed on the agenda or on any matter within their jurisdiction is asked to complete a speaker card that is provided on the speaker podium and submit the card to a Planning Department staff member. Please identify on the speaker card whether you are speaking on the agenda item or non-agenda item. Requests to speak on non-agenda items will be heard during the oral communications before the public hearing section of the agenda. Oral communications are limited to 30 minutes. Generally, comments are limited to 5 minutes per speaker unless time is granted to the chairperson. The chairperson may also, at his or her discretion, further limit the time of each speaker in order to accommodate a large number of speakers or to ensure that the business of the Planning Commission is effectively conducted. Any testimony or comments regarding the matters set for the public hearing will be heard during the public hearing for that item. I don't believe we have any public hearings this evening. So we will call the meeting to order, and we will take a moment of silent prayer or meditation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Hank, will you please lead?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Paulina, will you do roll call?
Yes. Good evening. Commissioner Williams.
Present.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Here.
Commissioner Hing. Vice Chair Lewis.
Here.
Chair Becerra.
Here. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes of May 25th, 2021? Hearing none, the minutes of May 25th, 2021 are approved and submitted. This is the time when any member of the public may speak to the Commission on any matter within the scope of duties assigned to the Commission relating to non-agendized or consent calendar items. Other matters included in this agenda may be addressed when that item is under consideration. For all oral communications, the chairperson may impose reasonable limitations on public comments to assure an orderly and timely meeting. The Ralph M. Brown Act limits the Planning Commission and staff ability to respond to public comments at this meeting. Thus, your comments may be agendized for a future meeting or referred to staff. The Commission may ask for clarification if desired at this time. By policy of the Commission, oral communications at this time on the agenda is limited to a total of 15 minutes. Persons who are not afforded the opportunity to speak at this time may do so under continuation of oral communications later on the agenda. And there are no public hearings this evening. So we will go straight to non-hearing items. Paulina will represent the first non-hearing item, fiscal year 2021-2022 Capital Improvement Program filing of conformance with the general plan.
Chair Becerra, Joanne will be presenting the staff report.
Okay.
And just to clarify, there was no public cards provided for public comment and no one on the phone.
Good evening, Honorable Chair, members of the Planning Commission, and also members of the public. The Capital Improvement Program identifies the proposed projects or purchases over fiscal year 2021 through 2022. In order for this Capital Improvement Program to be considered for the city's budget, a determination by the Planning Commission must be made that the Capital Improvement Program is consistent with the city's general plan. And before you, I will present the city's Capital Improvement Program. Under the category of building, this is the 5-year funding schedule, by the way. Under the category of buildings, the new projects include the ADA public facilities, the dispatch center's new roof, and the energy efficiency project. And the funding for that is in this category that I'm pointing to the 2021 to 2022 row. As far as the general category is concerned, the new projects would include the self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCUBA, police and fire portable and mobile radios, the EKG heart monitors, and some projects that are to be determined, and also financial software. For parks, playgrounds, and fields, the new projects would be the Lark Allen Park, Lark Allen House Design and Demolition, Shadow Oak Park Restroom, Galser Park Playground Improvements, the Friendship Park Improvements, and the Walmarado Park New Restrooms. I just wanted to point out that there's an error in this list. Instead of Orangewood Park, that should be Walmarado Park. And the Shadow Oak Park NPDES improvements. For regional, the new projects are the La Puente Road, Forecastle new traffic signal. With this is in joint cooperation with the City of Walnut, and the Lark Allen and Grove Center pedestrian improvement with the City of Covina. For sewer, the new projects would include the sewer system management plan update, the CIPP lining program, the sewer main replacement, portions of Glenview Road, Michelle Street, and Azusa Avenue, the sewer main replacement, portions of Azusa Avenue. The sewer main replacements include portions of Citrus Street, and the sewer system controls and power program. For streets and sidewalk, the new projects include the annual concrete sidewalk and curb and gutter repair program, annual concrete sidewalk and stamped concrete replacement, median landscaping, ADA curb access ramp program, sidewalk assessment and repair, residential street rehabilitation, which is an annual program, residential CDBG street improvements, catch basin cleaning, and street lights LEDs conversion program. For traffic signals, the new projects include the video detection, which is going to be citywide, traffic signal control replacement and backup battery, and installation of traffic control devices. And these are the general plan policies and actions that these projects are in conformance with. Under our Prosperous Community Action 2.3A and Policy 2.4. Under Accessible Community Action 4.2B. Under our Resilient Community Actions 5AB, 5AC, and Policy 5.9. Under our Active Community Policy 8.8, Action 8.8A, and Action 8.8B. A representative from the city's engineering division is available to answer any questions related to answer engineering related questions related to the CIP. With this, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 21-6083, determining that the fiscal year 2021-2022 CIP is in conformance with the city's general plan. If the Planning Commission has any questions, staff is available to answer.
We will open commission discussion.
Oh, sorry, Chair Becerra, I don't know if you would like to, if there's any members of the public that would like to speak.
Okay. Oh, okay. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this matter, please come forward.
Oh, you didn't have to. We just wanted to make sure you got your chance.
Thank you. I just have one question, and I'm hoping that in this process, someone will elaborate on the property on Clark Allen. Is that the street that was identified with that property adjacent to the park? There's a Cameron. In any case, it's the property adjacent to the Cameron Park. I believe it was on that matrix, and I wasn't quite sure as to what the plan is, if in fact this is related to any sort of development on that parcel. You may not be able to respond, but if someone can please take up that mantle, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Open discussion. Any commissioners have any questions?
I have a few questions. So just echoing off the speaker's inquiry about the Lark Ellen house design and demo, is that something that has already been specifically put in motion, or is that just a proposed expenditure? What is that exactly?
I will ask Okan to see if he can respond to that question. Okan, can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes. Lark Ellen Park house design and demo is a new project proposed for the upcoming fiscal year. So this is a new proposal that is going to be undertaken with the new fiscal year CIP program.
Okay, so it's just a proposal. Who made this proposal, or where did this originate?
So this is a list of CIP projects that the city's been working on developing. And so this is a requirement that it comes to the Planning Commission before they go to get approved as part of the CIP budget that is going to be presented to the City Council at the next City Council meeting.
I understand. What I'm saying is, where did this originate? Did this originate with staff? Did this originate with the council request? Did this originate with
The specific Lark Ellen
Correct.
project? Okan, if you could speak to that.
My understanding for this specific project was after the consensus with discussion with city staff that this project was proposed basically based on the input received from staff and from community as well.
Do we know what's going there? A parking lot or?
Do we know what's going there,
Uh,
Okan?
The intent is to do an expansion, the design and demolition of existing facility portion of it. So, like I said, it's a new proposed project. There is no design prepared at this time. So this will be part of the new fiscal year program.
So does that cover, for example, the planning process and plans and architectural design and stuff like that? Is that why it's, I guess the public's comment was about why is it that cost? Can you explain a little bit about why it's that cost?
The project as it is proposed includes the design as well as the actual construction cost as well, including demolition. So it is not necessarily just engineering or preparation of bid documents, but also includes the actual public works construction, including demolition and construction of new improvements.
Great, that answers my question.
Well, question that I have, did the city look at perhaps relocating that particular house?
I will have to get back to you on that. I am not sure if that has been looked at, but we will certainly can get back to you on that.
Yeah, because the reason why I asked that, I'm sure you're familiar that there is a similar situation near Covina Park, where they have a house that's kind of close in proximity of Covina Park. And so when you speak of the Lark Ellen and that Lark Ellen house, it seemed to be of a similar age and design. So I didn't know if there was some historical significance to the property. Do we know if anyone of significant history to the city of West Covina either built it or designed it?
This is the, sorry, Okan.
Well, yeah, no problem. Paulina, go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, we can. I'll definitely circle back on that and get back to you.
I think I can help answer that. So that's the residential property adjacent to the park, correct? So that property was actually purchased with money that was specific to the acquisition of park space. So as part of the sale for the Sunset Field behind Queen of the Valley, it was taken to the voters, and part of that proposition was that the proceeds from that sale had to go for park acquisition. And so that is why that property was, I think, purchased, and that's part of the improvements that are to acquire that property to increase park space for the city.
Okay, that's good. I was just asking, sometimes they will ask or see if someone would like to pay to relocate the house, as opposed to just demoing it.
Actually, I'm not clear, Pauline, in terms of it said design and demo. I guess from a perspective, is that are you going to plan to keep the house, remodel it, or I mean, the $200,000? I mean, is that just to demo it? Is that just for planning only, or you're going to remodel the house, like intend to keep the house, remodel it, and what are the fee for $200,000?
Well, I think Ocon can speak to that. I think that the fee does include the design and or demolition of what is being proposed, but the intent was to increase park space within the city. So I don't believe that the original intent was to remodel the home. I don't know if we've looked at options to have someone pay for it to be transferred. I think that the property had been leased back to the individuals. They had a daycare facility out of that facility. So that has, I think, been closed and no longer operating out of that space. And so the intent is to increase park space and
So
not
in another word,
remodel a home.
so in another word, is that this $200,000 is mainly just to get rid of the house and design or put something in place of it? I mean, it didn't say construction costs. It's just said design and.
I will defer that question to Ocon.
The project includes on the description, including demolition as well. So my understanding is that the project does not include remodeling, like Paulina explained. It would include the design and the parking lot work that is basically that Paulina mentioned. Just that's the intent of the work, including some demolition on the parking lot as well.
And then also just to clarify, so that was part of, it was called Measure H. It was on the November of 2016 election. And it was a proposition, a measure authorizing the sale of Sunset Field. Was on, wait, that's not it. Let's see. Okay, it was Sunset Field, right?
Yeah, it was the sale of Sunset Field, the city park space. To Eminent Health, for example.
Oh, yeah. So it was a measure authorizing the sale of Sunset Field. It was on the ballot for rescuing the voters in Los Angeles County, California on November 8, 2016. And voters voted yes. Vote was a vote in favor of authorizing the city to sell Sunset Field to the Queen of the Valley Hospital, which I believe was part of their expansion in building what they're going to be building now. And in return, they gave funding to them to help. I think they bought that property in return to give the city back some park space.
Well, we understand that this particular park or this particular single lot, the purchase, which is, we were not talking about the purchase of the land, which is what you mentioned about, which we sold and had a few $1 million in terms of park money, that was taken and purchased this land already. We're not talking about that part, which we do understand, which is great, that we had the money from Sunset Park and we're buying a little chunk of land, which is one single residential home, and added to the land for the park. Anyway, we're not talking about the land or the money to purchase the house for the park. We're talking about the $200,000 budget, which is right here that we're going to spend, and it's said to design and to demo. And I guess supposedly, I take it it's going to just to demo the house, maybe turn it into a parking space and what have you in that design portion. And I don't know if it's that include the construction portion that add up to the $200,000 for that single lot. I'm not even sure if it's even 10,000 square foot. Yeah, I'm sorry.
If I can chime in here, just with regard to this, the CIP recommendations. My understanding is these are basically a laundry list of projects that could potentially be funded down the line and potentially considered. This is not the consideration of any individual thing. The question, I think, before us tonight is whether or not these priorities are priorities that we should put on our master list of priorities for funding in the next 5 fiscal years, effectively. And so I think with regard to the individual project or proposed project, I think if there's a question as to whether or not $200,000 is the appropriate number, well, I mean, quite frankly, we're going to have to cross that bridge when we get to it. The question is whether or not prioritizing anything for that is something that we should consider within the timeline. And if memory serves me right, what is the proposed timeline for the design and demo? It would be this year, 21-22 would be the next fiscal year coming up. June 30th ends our fiscal year here. So I guess the question is there anything in particular that $200,000 is assigned for? And it seems like it's just a number, and we don't really have a good sense of what is actually going to be proposed with that. Now, ultimately, I guess one of us could argue, well, $200,000 isn't enough, or something along those lines. But we don't really have anything before us at this point in time. So, I mean, I understand the concern about it. Ultimately, that's probably going to have to be something that goes through Community and Senior Services as well as council and potentially us, depending on what it is. But I mean, ultimately, I think we're just making a recommendation of whether or not this laundry list is in conformance with the general plan. There are some things on here I have some questions on as to whether or not they are appropriate and in conformance with the general plan. I'll ask those questions shortly, but I just wanted to kind of point out what the scope of this is, because I think we're getting a little too far.
Thank you. I do have other questions too regarding the building sections as well. So I guess the energy efficiency projects, which is like the 2.8 million. I mean, what is that?
So that project was actually approved by the city council a couple weeks ago, if not a month ago. And it's an energy and solar project where we're going to be updating various equipment through different facilities, through city facilities throughout the city, including installation of solar here at City Hall, changing lights to energy efficient lights, updating some transformers, updating AC units to be more energy efficient. So that's the energy efficient project. So that was, I believe it may have been slated to have started last year, but we will be starting in the upcoming, we're getting started now as we speak. So that project is underway.
Thank you.
So I have a few other questions unless somebody else has some questions at this point. With regard to the traffic signal aspect of things, I guess that's a subsection here. What is the video detection citywide? What is that?
Okan, can you help answer that?
Under traffic signals video detection citywide is security upgrades, the fiber line installation that may include license tag readers, an interconnect system basically. But that is a planning level, like a high level project at this time. So it has not been initiated yet. That's for a proposed project. And my understanding is this was proposed by the police department for safety and security updates citywide for video detection.
So I guess I understand that it was proposed by the police department. What I'm trying to figure out is how is that consistent with the general plan?
I think it was discussed at one of the council meetings. Is that in regards to the thing that Chief spoke about last time? Maybe 2 council or 3 council meetings ago about the system they're going to put on certain areas of entry into the city that only reads license plates, and it's a high-tech technology that does not scan faces, but it actually detects license plates only. And it's going to help fight crime in our city because of and I think that was initiated because of the incident and the murder of an innocent young woman that died on Azusa and Amar in that shopping complex. And unfortunately, there was no cameras to catch those suspects. So if I'm not mistaken, is that the same program that's relating to this?
I believe it could be. That approval that council provided was for the flock system, and it's specifically, as you mentioned, it's for cameras at various intersections throughout the city that works with other cities that have that same program in detecting the license plate of vehicles entering and leaving the city. So I'm not sure if that's specifically the same program that they're looking at installing at these traffic lights, but I would imagine they'd want something that's compatible.
So
Well, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what is the video detection citywide? Is it that program or is it something else?
I'd have to confirm with PD.
And then going back to my question, which was directed to the staff, what would be the finding that would have this be, I guess, consistent with the
general plan? If it is regarding the video detection system that the police department was proposing, the general plan does have a safety component, and if this is that system that the PD was proposing, this system would help increase public safety.
So, Joanne, this would be for security, not for ticket writing.
It would be for security, yes.
I guess my problem with it is that very, very vague, and I don't know, for this to be considered a priority of the city that is under the auspices of a capital improvement project, I'm suspect of something along those lines which would have the propensity to undermine our civil liberties. And so I'm very reticent to approve that as a priority without certain stipulations on that, how that is used, how that is utilized by our police department. I was not impressed with the lack of safeguards that the city council imposed on the whole flop system or whatever. Unfortunately, it leaves too much to the imagination, and I think, the fact is we don't have body cams in our city. I mean, it's insane to me from a public safety standpoint that we don't, particularly in this day and age, where ultimately these are decisions that are costing our city money in litigation that realistically we should probably win going away in most circumstances. But unfortunately, you have absence of that, and we're basically tacitly saying, oh, well, great, we should spend money surveilling our citizens as opposed to making sure that we have true government accountability. I don't understand how we can't have both. We should have both, and both should be a priority. So, I mean, in that sense, not to get too much on my soapbox here, but seriously, I have a problem with it. I don't think that's a priority. I don't think that's consistent with the general plan, and I think both should be.
Joanne, can you tell me how far these cameras, how far they can record a block within 100 feet? I mean, how far, what distance?
She just said she doesn't know which
I don't know
program
any
this
specifics
is. So,
regarding the program.
Well, I can tell you I have cameras in my home. I have CCTV, and there's been several incidents where the police actually come and ask me for my footage. So I'm not, opposing what you're saying, but in some instances it could be helpful.
I completely agree.
Chair and Commissioners, Baron Bettenhausen, City Attorney. Just to follow up on Commissioner Lewis's comments from a little bit ago, the overarching intent tonight is just an overview of these projects and whether they conform with the general plan. I think these are valuable discussions, absolutely. But tonight we are not here to approve the individual projects. So I just wanted to point that out.
Actually, that's a good point that you mentioned. You said that we're not here to approve the individual project, but the items are here, and we do need to. I mean, it's a good point that we need to bring it up and talk about what is it that we're doing, because otherwise, if you didn't ask the questions, I mean, $50,000 on an item with videotape for the city of 130-something thousand. I'm not sure if that's just a little test pilot that maybe put on one section of a corner of a street to test to see if it's working or not, or what have you. We don't know. I just don't know that, and I do understand that this is a line item, that it's good to find out what it is that we're recommending to the city council. So
Well, maybe can there be some limitations?
Well, my recommendation, if there is the majority of the commission's concerned about any individual item that you could essentially approve without that item. So you're approving the projects. If you don't like one particular project or have a concern that it doesn't conform with the general plan, you approve it without that project.
Or can someone just call, or who would have the details on this project?
but I actually like to hear what the other commissioners are concerned, whether it's line item, was the whole thing. I mean, I, for example, have
If I can, I'm merely chiming in here, not because I'm necessarily against or for a particular project. It's merely a question of whether or not this should be in our list of priorities. That's my point. I understand that we're not talking about individual projects because those individual projects are not before us. I mean, that is factually an accurate statement, and I agree with that statement. However, if we are to present this to the City Council as if it is a priority or should be a priority, I think that that's where the concern is, and whether or not it conforms with the general plan, because that's what we're doing. We're not here to micromanage each individual project. It's more of, okay, overall, does this conform with what the general plan is? And I think that's my concern. Outside of that, I think that those are bigger policy discussions than what a planning commission is here to do. My question is whether or not we should be affirmatively recommending something that, again, video detection citywide. I don't know. Nobody knows what that means. You guys don't know what that means. So I look at it and I'm like, okay, video detection citywide. That sounds like we're going to turn into London. Great. I mean, if that's the direction that our residents want us to go in, well, I might think about moving, but I doubt that's the direction that they want us to go in. So, quite frankly, I think we gotta, when we're describing these things and we're setting these as priorities, I think that's the concern I have, and that's the only concern I have. Outside of that, if the council wants to go in a certain direction and has a policy basis for doing so, totally understand that. I respect that. I mean, we're all appointed officials in this regard. So to that end, we do have to respect that. But when we're just saying, we're speaking in generalities and we don't know what generalities we're speaking toward, and we're saying we should allocate $50,000 a year for 5 consecutive funding years, I don't know. That's my question.
It's a lot of line items to go through. I mean, it's quite interesting. It's eye-popping as well. Like, for example, the general area, which is the second column or the second sections. It's like projects to be determined, TBD, on balance of $20 million. I believe it's $15 million. And I'm sure we're recommending this for the city councils to move on. But what is this section? Is that I guess we're asking staff really to help us explain so we also can understand what, I mean, I guess that adds up to that whole section for the general area, that $20 million. I believe that is a fund that we got.
Yeah, if I could just address part of what you said. Absolutely. In no way do we mean to hinder discussion. I mean, that's the whole point of why we're here. We're not asking for a rubber stamp. But to clarify one thing you did say, this tonight isn't even a recommendation of these projects. It's just a finding or not from the commission whether it conforms with the overall project as described, whether it conforms with the general plan and the policies that staff has laid out in the staff report. And if you can't make that finding, that's totally fine too.
Can the city attorney or our assistant city manager, maybe we could take a break and then city staff could get that information? Is that possible?
I just want to continue to see if we can have more further discussions, and maybe later down on the line we can have a discussion and perhaps gather some more information if we can. I mean, part of the sections, like I was saying, that this is a package, and $50 million is basically to be determined. And I guess at this moment in time, if we are recommending to or looking at the CIP, how do we make I guess, whether it fit the general plan or not, when we don't even know it's to be determined? That's a big chunk. And on top of that, I mean, these are line items by line items. The interesting part is that this is for fiscal year 21, 22. Where are the money coming from? I mean, I'm seeing all this number, but there's no, at the end of the day, all these numbers, it didn't even have a total. Like we're spending, 15 here, 3 million there, 200,000, 400,000. What is the total, and do we have that money?
I think everyone is asking for more of a detailed description and what the necessity is and how it would be spent.
I just assumed that the park section might be coming from revenues that was voted on from the other measures that's a couple of years back for, money to improve Friendship Park improvements. Like that $1 million, is that money from sunset sale or is that money from the measure? Shadow Oak Park, the NPDES improvements, that's another total, 1,753,800,000. So I guess, is that money that we have in the general plan and the general budget that we're actually kind of pushing through? Or are these money that is actually coming from a measure and it's set aside for if it's set aside, right, for a park, for example, for Friendship Park improvement, that $1 million, if that is the case, then we really don't have a choice but set aside for that park.
So if you look at the spreadsheet, a lot of the funding for the CIP projects is special funds. If you look at where it says the 1, 2, 3, fourth column in, it says funding sources. So that's where it's showing you where the funding is coming from for that proposed project.
Yeah, and the
Measure M, Measure R, I believe BT is, Measure R. So it does indicate in the attachment where the proposed funding is coming from for those specific projects.
And I do see the Lark Allen House under funding source park excuse me, I'll just say it, but whatever it's called, accuracy.
Position.
Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, that's money that would have came from the sale, right?
Yeah, it does. I said
Okay.
For fiscal year 21-22, all CIP projects will be funded from special funds, except for the maintenance of effort required by SB1. So the general fund amount for CIP for this upcoming fiscal year will be approximately $500,000. A little bit over $500,000.
And there's
So basically on that item, if we look at it, for park purpose, it's almost $4.908 million.
I'm sorry, where are you looking?
Page 391.
Capital improvement programs, categories, parks, playground, and fields. That would be page 394.
Okay.
So the total cost of it is $4-point-something million. And then it has a list of all the funding. So all these money is coming from somewhere. And then it has projected 2020 to 2021. It's listed at $470,000, right? And then from 2021 to 2026, another $340,000.
So the projected for 2020-21 would be this current fiscal year. So some projects have started this year. They've already expended funds.
Right. Okay. So that's the money that comes from parks, and it's
Sorry. So under funding sources, that's where the funding comes from. The fiscal year projected 2020-2021. That's what it's been expended this current fiscal year we're in. Then 2021-2022 would be the what's projected for next fiscal year, starting July 1st.
So for the fund, actually, you know what? That's interesting. How it's a 5-year funding schedule, So we only get the money for 2021, and nothing else for the rest of the 5 years except 2024.
I think the funding source indicates where the money's coming from, not necessarily when the money is allocated.
Well, I understand that, but if we're looking at, it seems like if I'm looking at this funding source for the park section correctly, 2021 to 2022, it's 3.758 million. And then any year after that, seems like we're not getting any money. We're basically just getting money this year.
Those are
fiscal
monies
year.
that are supposed to be used. If it's blank, that means that it's expected to be completed within the fiscal year.
Under that budget.
These are, based on the project. So you're saying that these projects would be then completed next year?
So like Del Norte Park, you have, they're going to be doing dog park renovation, and that funding source will be coming from the LA County Park / Prop A. And so then you have cost of item. So they're using FY projected from 2021 to 2022, that with those, it's either grants or those funding sources. If you combine it, it covers that specific project.
Well, so the project, like you, Commissioner Gutierrez mentioned, the third column in it says cost of item. So for the dog park renovation, it's $80,000. The funding source is LA County Park funds and Prop A funds. The monies that were spent this current fiscal year, $10,000, and the projected funds to be expended this upcoming fiscal year, $70,000. So that totals the $80,000 for the total project cost.
So does that mean that if we waited until next year, there's no money for the dog park anymore? Or
So we've projected to expend $10,000 this fiscal year. And then that maybe the project was started at the end of this year, or towards the end, and so only $10,000 was expended. The full $70,000 remaining will be expended in the upcoming year.
Okay, but then after that, I guess
After that, hopefully the project's completed and we won't be doing. There won't be a need for dog park renovation.
For that particular park, will there be more
That
money?
particular project at the park. So there could be other improvements at the park, but the dog renovation should be completed next year.
Okay, I guess I am trying to understand here. So the money is for this particular park, the total of $80,000.
Project.
The project, for this particular project. I guess my question is, will there be more money coming for...
As we list projects, then we would find funding sources for those, which could be the same funding sources that we have listed here.
Okay, so we don't know how much the measure or how much money we're expecting to get every year or so. I guess my thinking is this: if we only have $80,000 and we're spending all in one location, then do we have more money somewhere to put it somewhere else, or is this like a stream of income coming in on an annual basis?
I don't
Chime in.
Not sure.
Quick. I was
Go ahead.
gonna just mention, with regard to CIP, this is something that I've worked on previously with the Community and Senior Services Commission, and so CIP is basically just a giant laundry wish list, effectively, of things that may eventually be done, subject to consideration of the City Council or the various commissions, and then the City Council. So the question of funding shouldn't really be guiding our discussion. The question is whether or not this is appropriate under the guise of the general plan. Meaning, is this consistent? Is everything in this list consistent with the priorities that we've set forth in the general plan? Not whether or not the funding is there, because ultimately the funding allocation decisions, that's the City Council's province. That's not our province. Whether this project is preferable to another, that's the City Council's province. That's not our province. So I think we're getting sort of bogged down into a numerical discussion when it's not really a numerical discussion that we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on a discussion of whether or not any of these projects are at odds with the general plan, and if they are, we should either say, well, this needs to be modified to be slightly more specific so it's in conformance with the general plan, or alternatively, well, it's not in conformance, so we approve subject to line iteming that out. I think that is the understanding that I've always had with regard to how CIP lists work. And I'll let the city attorney maybe chime in on that, and maybe I'm a little off base, but...
That is correct. The authority, the commission, is derived from the council specific to land use, in the sense that we're talking about the general plan and in view of the land use. As you mentioned, the general plan will have a policy in it say, we want clean and healthy neighborhoods. So the question tonight is, looking at this line item project, does that comply with that policy or any of the other number of policies in the general plan? Again, the budget is worth a discussion, but it is not necessarily one for guiding the decision for tonight. And it is certainly a question which will come up in the future as these projects, but describing it as a wish list is a very good way to describe it.
Well, I guess the question that I'm kind of trying to understand, if we're looking at whether or not, for example, under the general, talking about the balance of 15 million, and it says projects to be determined, we don't have any understanding. Are they talking about projects that are going to be in line with specific items that are identified already in the general plan? Or what type of projects? What's the breadth and scope?
Can you point me to which section you're...
Oh, okay. That one's on page 393, and it's G4, projects to be determined, balance of 20 million. But for this year, the cost is 15 million. And it talks about the CIP, and then they have LRB. $393, and it's G4.
And so, and also, okay, go ahead. Is there a question? Also, while we're looking at that, I think what we're voting on, which I think explains it on the page 389, says the city of West Covina develops a 5-year capital improvement program that consists of an extensive list of projects necessary to maintain and improve the city's infrastructure. The city defines a CIP as having 1, a capital asset with a minimum dollar value of $45,000. And number 2, an estimated useful life of 3 years or more. A multi-year CIP is necessary because it is impossible to fund all capital projects immediately. In order to meet the city's needs, it is imperative that the city continues to plan and strategize how it will allocate limited financial resources for capital projects. And then it says the CIP should not be confused with the capital improvement budget. The capital improvement budget represents the first year of the CIP that is reviewed and adopted by the city council. It authorizes specific projects and appropriates specific funding for those projects. The capital improvement budget for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 provides $37.7 million for new projects. Projects and funding sources listed in the CIP for years other than the year 1, commonly called out years, are not authorized until the annual budget for those years is adopted by the city council. The out years serve only as a guide for future planning and are subject for further review and modification in subsequent years. The City Council adopts a 5-year CIP to provide standard by which to prioritizes and increases the needs of the city, analyzes various funding sources, matches appropriate the funds to various needs, plan to meet the city's capital needs over an extended period of time as funding becomes available. So if I'm not mistaken, we're looking at a kind of like Commissioner Lewis said, a kind of like a laundry list of priorities that the city staff and its council want to address, and that in that process, in creating a laundry list or a recommendation list, the Planning Commission helps in saying this is, in other words, a great list to focus on, or if not, or so forth. Is that correct?
Well, I completely understand Commissioner Bryant Gutierrez's point of view. I do understand that the City Council determined and spent the money that the city has. I do understand that. But also having us to do some type of recommendations to come up with a list of things to spend is something that we need to look into, or even ask, how did this list come about? What, like Commissioner Nick Lewis has mentioned, like, not only that, how does this list come about? Is this important to the whole West Covina populations, these items? And I guess coming from a financial backgrounds, I guess the question comes in is, I can't really, well, not can't, but it's just hard to make a wish list without a dollar amount to what it is that we're working on. Yes, it is a wish list. It's like, okay, let's do this many dollar, or we don't even have we just pull it up from the cloud that this is what we're going to do. But then yet we don't have, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to not look at the funding source of where the money is coming from. I understand completely that the city council are spending or spent the money that West Covina, and they do make the last decision and the ultimate decisions that regarding this plan. But it is important to, like, how does this come about? This is my first time, and I'm sure the public are also looking at it with the staff. I mean, the staff is answering, and the engineer who is behind on the phone is also answering some of the questions that we have, which we don't know how this list come about. And I do understand that, but I also wanted to know, I mean, if this list, like earlier regarding the $50 million, I mean, okay, if we make a wish list this year, I get it, that we're doing this fiscal year. But do we have another 15 million next year or so? Or this is just the COVID funding that we're getting? And 50 million to be determined is like, we're making a recommendation. Are we making any recommendations if that is the case? I don't know.
Yes, since it's a non-hearing item, what exactly are we doing today with this?
I think I'll let Barron
the attorney.
answer that.
Yeah, so again, tonight is for you to make a finding whether this list, all of it or most of it or some of it, that's up to you, conforms with the policies in the general plan. And again, Commissioner, if I could circle back to Commissioner Williams, you raised a specific line item that you had concerns with, and I did just take a look at it, and I understand that. It sounds vague in that line item, so you're asking yourself, how do I know if this conforms with the policies as I'm looking at them?
Correct.
That's exactly the question we're asking of you tonight, is for you to raise that exact question and decide, can I vote? And ultimately, that's up to the commission to decide. Commissioner Hang, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hang.
Yeah, you did. That's correct.
Good questions. I mean, the source of funding is something obviously very important to the city, to the council, of course, but also to staff. I don't think any of us want to bring forward a project we don't have the money for. I think our point tonight is we're very early in the process to be discussing that. I mean, we're looking at a 5-year plan. Tonight's step is basically the first step. We can't get to that discussion of funding until we meet the hoop that we have to jump through tonight, which is having our planning agency say these projects conform with the policies we've put in the general plan. This is basically the first step. So those budgetary discussions, where the money's going to come from, important. But I think at this point we're just not able to answer them because we don't have this list in hand yet. Approved. We don't have this list approved in hand yet.
So can I ask just one real final question? And and I just did want to get clarification for everyone because of the fact that there is sort of it looks like sort of a grab bag to be determined $21 million kind of thing. So can you answer under, it's on page 391, it says fund number 179, and it says CIP-LRB 2020. And then there's a little note there that says $21 million, and then it says general fund transfers. So does this have to do with the Recovery Act and getting additional funds that are allocated to that, or I just want to understand that aspect of it.
Where do you see that?
391.
Yeah, 391, and it's in the second table, and then it says fund number 179, and then under fund description it says CIP-LRB 2020. I was just trying to figure out what...
Line item 179. I think what everybody wants to know is what is the accountability of that money after today?
It will go to the city council for the CIP budget, along with the budget and the CIP budget, and that's what they'll be approving. And then as we, just as the operations budget, we have to stick within how the money's been allocated and for what projects.
For future allocations, will we be able to vote on that?
Not the planning commission; it will be the city council.
Yeah, so I guess we're more. Yeah, so we're trying to determine. What we're trying to do is determine if the general plan matches the proposal projects. We don't have authority to say if there's a budget or not, because this is just a idea list kind of thing. And there's still, I think, town hall meetings going on for the annual next year's budget and so forth. So this is not even a budget. It's not even a budget. It's just a capital, just a summary of projects that the city council is going to vote on if they do, obviously with the public's input and so forth. If this is going to be projects that confine with the general plan. So not necessarily are we approving the monetary amounts next to it, because that will be the city council's authority. But some of the projects, like, and just for people who are home listening in, I know Del Norte Park, there's going to be the proposed ideas. There's a Del Norte Park, dog park renovation, pour and play playgrounds. No. So there's dog park renovation at Del Norte Park. There's Shadow Oak Park Playground. Wasn't that project already completed?
I'm sorry, which one?
The Shadow Oak Park Playground?
Yes.
So that one's already done. So then we have the Lark Allen Park, Lark Allen House Design and Demo, Cortez Senior Center, replacing sliding doors at Senior Center for our seniors. We have Shadow Oak Park restrooms upgrade and renovation. We have Gallister Park playground improvements, Friendship Park improvements, Orangewood Park new restrooms, Shadow Oak Park NPDES improvements, and staff could clarify what that means. And then Greenwich Park tot lot replacement, California Park tot lot replacement. So I know a lot of the residents living in those park areas, and based upon a lot of conversations with those residents, I think they're going to be very happy. And this is great that staff and the majority of the city council is focusing on these improvements, because I know the residents are going to be really happy to see all these improvements to our parks.
Sorry. Yes, on the one hand, we're saying not to look at the numbers, but then on the other hand, we're saying, oh, these are the line items that we're going to work or build on or spent on. So, okay, so if you're saying one does not mesh with the other, and we're making a decisions on, okay, let's look at these line items to see if it fit or not. I mean, I understand that the parks, those monies are funded through all the measures that the people voted on. Okay, maybe that's a must, that's a must do. So we it's earmarked for park, so you can't really use the money for anything else but park. So that's that portion. Are we really looking at, if you're looking at the number that we're looking at, it's really, the parks and playgrounds, if you take all that out, I mean, how and what are we working on, the improvements? If we take out all the parks, we're really looking at the sewage system, the streets and sidewalks, and a little bit of like less than 150,000 on video signal stuff, which is the video detection, the traffic signal control, installation of traffic control device. So if we take all the park money out, which is, like I said again, it's not so much of a concern of because the park, those are a measure that we actually are going to get the money, and that is earmarked for park. So that's that. Now, if we look further into this, I mean, a lot of the money that we get was for the general, which is $1.2 million for self-contained breathing apparatus. And I believe maybe all this has to do with the COVID. Police and fire portable and mobile radios, EKG heart monitoring system, of course, the $15 million something, which is the total of the $20 million. I mean, that's really is the bulk of the item pretty much. And everything else is, you can say that, okay, don't look at the price. Okay, don't look at the cost. We have that funding already. But I guess the question comes in is that, okay, if we take all that out, the park and all that stuff, really the money that we're talking about is the sewer, the street, and even the sewer in the street. Even that, I think those are money that also come earmarked from the general. I mean, those money, I believe, is being taxed. I remember paying the tax bill, and there's a certain dollar amount go to sewer. And I believe that money might go to those items. And then I'm not sure about the street and sidewalk, but I don't remember seeing that. So really, you add it all up, take out the park, take out the sewer, the street and sidewalk, I'm not quite sure, but all the little detections and this and that, it's really only $140,000 plus the $20 million that's what we're talking about. So I guess out of that, what's important? $15 million, it's to be determined. So we're really looking at, I mean, I know it's not to talk about the dollar amount, but it's kind of hard not to talk about the dollar amount. It's like, what are we approving to some extent? Okay, let's talk about the line items that we're moving on.
So, City Attorney, can you explain once again the Planning Commission's role on this? So as a Planning Commission, we are looking at what we're being presented with to say, does these line items confine with the general plan of the City of West Covina? In regards to the budget, that is the City Council's job to allocate and fund a general budget for the city. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Government Code 65401 requires the commission or the city to bring to the commission a list of capital improvement projects. Having the numbers on there is a bit of a red herring for you guys. It doesn't need to be on there because that's not what the law requires you to look at. It requires you to look at the list of projects and say, yeah, this matches up with what we say in our general plan, which is clean and safe neighborhoods or healthy air or whatever the policy may be in the general plan. So the numbers on there, we don't want to mislead you. I think they were put on there for convenience because the next step after you approve it is it gets bundled in with the budget, and then those discussions about numbers gets had at the council level, and of course staff will make sure that the budget that's coming forward, the money's there. But this is the first step, so I understand it's a bit of a hurdle, stumbling block, but it's not intended to be.
I'd like to make a motion, if I can. I'd like to motion to approve resolution number 21-6083 with the following modification to project number 21023 as attached in Exhibit B, page 398, to indicate that video detection for public park crime hotspots and body cams. I think that covers two different aspects here that I do not believe that the current description adequately covers. And as a result of that, I believe that under Action 2.3A, the second section, improving the public realm, I think the body cams certainly do that. And Policy 8.8, increasing safety in public parks, I think that's the best of both worlds, and I would motion to approve with that modification.
I would just urge is that if city staff could please find out what that means, because if that video detection system is what the chief presented to the city council had already approved that project. And most importantly, I would urge my colleagues to please let staff make a phone call first before we vote on the motion, because if that is a life-saving camera, because I was here in this council meeting when a family was crying because their young daughter died on a Susa and Amar in a parking lot. And I mean, it gives me chills because no one should die innocently by any gang. And I think that we should do our due diligence before we eliminate that to make sure what that means, because we had a family in here crying because once again on the Susa and Amar, someone died and we didn't have any detection system to catch the license plate who committed that murder. So,
also, I would like to add.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Gutierrez. I guess the whole what Commissioner Nick Lewis is trying to do here is he's adding the body cam into his motion, and that basically isn't that.
Well, I could have swore that our officers do have body cams. They don't have body cams. I could have swore I see them with body cams on.
And you said it yourself is also it's a wish list. You may not get it.
Yeah, but we're eliminating. If we eliminate that, then we're deleting that wish list. So I will urge that if that was a matter the city council voted on, the commission doesn't have authority to eliminate something the city council voted on already.
Wait, so you're saying this document came from the commission?
Eliminating anything that the city council is voting on by making such a motion. Even if approved, that motion would not modify anything that the city council has already put in place.
So, Commissioner Lewis,
you're
asking for in addition.
And so all I'm saying is that if we want to have a clear and coherent policy that is in conformance with the general plan, I believe that modification is appropriate. I don't think that you need to say, oh, we only get to have one or the other or something like that. We can have both. The city council can set forth their priorities if they believe that one is a higher priority than another. They are certainly well within their rights to do that. And Mr. City Attorney, I believe you will confirm that they have the ability to utilize these descriptions in a sort of, they have wide latitude in terms of utilization of these descriptions. And so ultimately putting in that description or providing that direction as it being in conformance with the general plan is not.
So are you adding to it, you're saying?
Absolutely. 1,000%.
So you're saying, so video detection systems plus or recommendations to look into additional.
I am saying specifically that the video program, the citywide video program, I'm saying specifically for criminal hotspots in public parks, which is again set forth as a public safety consideration under the general plan, section 8.8, as well as the second portion of 2.3A. I believe that's consistent. Improving relations with the public is certainly something worth doing, and making sure that there is public accountability is also certainly worth doing. We can have both. We shouldn't.
Commissioner Lewis,
and that is in conformance with the general plan.
So you're saying cameras at parks?
Correct.
So that's under UFP on page 394. It's under the unfunded projects, which is called Parks, Security Cameras, and Lighting.
I think that with regard to the
So can we add
video detection citywide, I don't think. I don't think that is in conformance with the general plan.
Well, I think there's two. There's when they're budgeting a certain project. If it's for that camera system for the light for the certain intersections, then that's one budget. But then when we talk about parks, there's another unfunded project here. So can the city council? Can the planning commission recommend that an unfunded project be looked into part of this improvement project?
You can make any motion you like in directing staff, but again, the item for tonight is whether you're finding these projects are in conformance with the general plan. And if you want to if you want to approve the resolution as written with amendments, we can do that as well. But if you are wanting to direct staff to look into something, I would recommend that be a separate motion. And I wanted to ask Commissioner Lewis if we could get clarification on what your motion is on the table, and after which it would be appropriate for the chair to call to see if there's a second for that.
Mm-hmm. So my motion was, and I'll circle back to this, my motion was to approve resolution number 21-6083 with the modification of Exhibit A, page 398, project number 21023. Say video detection in the description. Video detection for criminal hotspots in public parks and body cams for police.
In addition, or you're specifying what that means?
That will replace.
So
that's my motion.
So you are specifically saying those two items then?
I am specifically stating those two items.
So what happens if it means about those? How about if it's the other program? We're eliminating. We're not recommending that then, or
eliminating anything.
Yeah. You're saying that you're specifically mentioning two items that you want to amend on this.
I'm saying my description is in conformance with the general plan. I do not believe that description, as constituted, is in conformance with the general plan. That's all. I'm not saying that the project is not meritorious. I'm not saying anything. Okay? I want to be very clear. I am modifying the description solely so that it is in conformance with what I view to be the terms of the general plan.
Yeah, I'm not saying nothing's wrong with that. I'm just saying that since we don't have clarification on that, I think we need to do our due diligence and ask staff to find out what that means before we specify something that's not meant for that. So I would just urge my fellow commissioners.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Lewis, let me ask for clarification. So on page 398, 21023, it basically just stated video detection citywide, but you just wanted to change or amend that portion to have the video detection at parks and also with a body cam for the police officer?
Correct.
So those are the two items that you have that you would like to have versus to having the video all over the city.
I don't even know what that means. So
I mean, for $50,000, we can't have it all over the city.
Yeah.
I don't think
We should find out, that's what I'm saying.
It's specific enough. And ultimately, I don't believe that staff is in a position to give us any further information. This is certainly something that we're making a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council has further information on this. They are more than welcome to make any modifications that they need to make.
I'm sure if we take a fast recess, I'm sure they could call our chief or our chief of police or our finance director and get that answer. I'm just urging my other commissioners to please, let's do our due diligence, because let's not say just for two things, wow, it might be meant for that murder on Azusa and Amar. So I'm just saying.
Well,
at the end of the day, the city council still make the last decisions.
I have no idea what we're talking about here. Honestly, this is kind of getting ridiculous.
So staff should find out.
I'm being very clear. The council has wide latitude. The city attorney just confirmed that the council has wide latitude in interpretation of these projects. ultimately, if there's no second, I think this motion fails. So it is what it is.
I'll second it.
I want to know what a video detection system means.
I'm sorry. Did you hear it? My speaker is off. So Commissioner Lewis made a motion to amend page 398 with the project number 21023 with the video detection instead of citywide at park, and he want body cam. So it's a wish list, and I will second that.
Thank you. And so, Chair, at this moment, if there's no further discussion, it would be appropriate to call for a vote.
Yes.
Are we calling for the vote? Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
So I'd like to make a comment before my vote. So I would just urge my other commissioners once again, let's find out what that means, because you're technically changing the wording to two specific items. And once again, by changing it to two specific items, you may be eliminating a project that was intended to catch criminals, such criminals as the murder on Azusa and Amar. And I don't think it's hard enough for city staff to get on the phone and call our city manager or chief of police, which I know will answer their phone. So I will vote no on that motion.
Commissioner Hing? Commissioner Chair Lewis? Vice Chair Lewis?
Aye.
Chair Becerra?
No. My opinion is that I think it should be put in addition to what they're asking.
Okay, motion passes 3-0. It was 3.
3-2.
Yeah, 3-2. Yeah, I was like,
Okay.
sorry, 3-2.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know we voted already, but I do like to add the fact that I understand that this is a recommendation, and also when it comes to spending the city's money, we as commissioners, as a body of commissioners, we don't have any say in that part. But this is a list. I understand that it is a recommendations, but at the end of the day, whether there's budget or not, or whether the council, they also need a body of 5. They also need to vote it on some of these projects as well. Whenever it comes in front of them, when the time comes for them to make a decision, whether it's to move ahead with some of these items that we recommended to move forward today. So I just wanted to say that it's not set in stone and it's not finalized in a sense that it's a done deal. It's just, you can say it's a wish list and it's a recommendations from the planning commission. And again, Commissioner Lewis, I also want to make sure that, I do understand that City Council, at the end of the day, they spend the money for the city of West Covina, and they ultimately make the decisions. I mean, yes, we are asking for body cams or video, what have you. That line item may very well not be, it may not come up or it may come up. It depends by how the city council allocate their money and how they want to spend their money. So ultimately, at the end of the day, like I said, I do understand that, yes, we are making a recommendation, and that is the commission's wish list. But at the same time, that's not ultimately the end of or the ultimate decisions that we're making.
Well, I agree, but Mr. City Attorney, it's your job to know what that means, because if that's an item the City Council already voted on, the Planning Commission doesn't have authority to override the City Council. And so for you not to state that, it's kind of leaving us into a vote that, okay, whatever. But yeah, it's what it is. But I will urge you next time to find out what that means, because we're voting on something that may have been already voted by the City Council, and this commission does not have the authority to amend something that the City Council already voted on. But yeah. Thank you.
Give me one sec, Commissioner.
The
Sorry,
addi-
give me
the
one sec. This is like the third time I heard it tonight regarding this particular project. This is the first time that I've seen it. But Commissioner Brian Gutierrez had mentioned quite a few times throughout this evening, stating the fact that the city council had approved this already. I mean,
I was asking throughout this meeting if that was the project that the city council had already approved.
These items, it may be one or two items of the wish list of some of the city councils, but it may not be all uniform because what we're recommending right now, it started initial with staff and then it comes to this body and then it gets forwarded to the city council. They will make the ultimate, and they can make adjustment and amendment too to this thing. So what we're doing tonight, it may get changed by the time it moves to the city council. And they have not made the decision yet. This is not the end.
Well, we don't know this.
When we're recommending this,
We understand that.
So when we're recommending this to the city councils, it's just a recommendation. They also, city councils
I
also can make
understand that,
amendments.
but we don't know what that means. So, go ahead.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, I would motion that we move on. This particular item has been concluded.
I agree. Okay, let's move on to item number 2.
I agree.
Resolution adopting design guidelines for small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. Is anyone in the audience would like to comment on this matter? If anyone, come forward.
Chair, it
will
would be
deliver the
appropriate to
staff.
call for the staff report
Oh,
first.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll go ahead and start off with a bit of history regarding the design guidelines for wireless telecommunication facilities in the public right-of-way. This all started off with an FCC order that limited local management of small wireless facilities. In that FCC order, it stated that the cities may review the aesthetics of wireless telecommunication facilities. However, the standards would have to be reasonable, not burdensome, and published in advance. The FCC order also limited fees that could be charged for processing small wireless facilities, and it also enacted a 60-day shot clock where when the application is submitted, the project or the project would have to be approved or decided upon within 60 days. And at the same time, in 2019, there was also a Supreme Court ruling that stated that cities are allowed to regulate the aesthetics. With that, in April of 2019, the Planning Commission adopted the city's first design guidelines for small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. In July 2019, the city received 5 applications for small wireless facilities placements on top of light poles. These applications did not comply with the design guidelines, so the Planning Commission had to make the decision to whether or not to approve it. Eventually, the Planning Commission approved it. However, it was appealed to the City Council, in which the City Council had denied the application. Following the decision of these applications, the city updated the ordinance pertaining to wireless telecommunication facilities in the public right-of-way. It was reviewed and recommended for approval by the Planning Commission on January 2020, and it was adopted by the City Council in May 2020. Following City Council adoption, the Planning Commission conducted 2 study sessions, one in July 2020 and one in August 2020, to review the city's adopted design guidelines and to amend it so that it complies with the city's current code. During the study sessions, the Planning Commission directed staff to prepare design guidelines that included a hierarchy of preference and something that is simple and straightforward. Staff, and as the main guideline or base for the the revised design guidelines, we utilized the city's existing design guidelines and eliminated sections that are already covered by the municipal code, standards that are already stated in the municipal code. And these standards or these items included location. In the guidelines, the location was previously 100 feet from residential properties. However, with the adopted municipal code, it is now, it can be located within 15 to 30 feet from any single family residential or from any residential use, provided that depending on the zoning designation for the site, because in some zoning designations, the required setback is 10 feet for residential, and in some areas it's 30 feet, or I'm sorry, 25 feet.
Joanne, real quick, can you clarify on that location, 100 feet from residential properties? That was adopted, but that's something that we can no longer require. Is my understanding?
That's correct. This was in the previous design guidelines, so it was eliminated because it now is covered under the municipal code. In the current municipal code, it is specifically establishes the location of pertaining to how far it can be from residential properties. So in the municipal code, it states it has to be at least 15 to 30 feet away from single-family residential structures, depending on the zoning. It's 15 feet from single-family residential structures in the PCD1 zone and 30 feet from single-family residential structures in the R1 or RA zone.
Now, with regard to that distance, is that something that we can modify, or is that something that we're limited to under the scope of the new federal regulations on this?
You would not be able to modify it because it's already been determined by the city council through the ordinance.
I'm just saying, hypothetically, if we made a recommendation to the city council that say, we think 15 feet is too small, we want it to be 30 feet or something like that, is that something that we're limited to under the FCC regs, or I'm just trying to get an understanding of what's what here.
Chair, Commission, I have to start by saying wireless, it could be a full 8-hour seminar without covering all of it. The regulations here have become so extensive. But if Joanne doesn't mind, I'll jump in to answer that. I do want to point out, first, this is specific to small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. So this is not covering facilities on private property, which is a separate permitting process. And these are design guidelines we're asking for in advance. So you're asking specifically about the 100 feet. There is a provision that we put into the municipal code. If any portion of these regulations create an effective prohibition, and I use those terms intentionally because that's a federal term used in federal law, we cannot effectively prohibit a wireless service. So if a carrier comes to us and says, if you're making me go out 100 feet, that's an effective prohibition, that's a problem for the city. So we have a mechanism, however, where we're allowed to make that work.
Right. What I was getting at is, let's say you have a scenario in which there is a corner lot, okay? So technically you are in the public right-of-way, but you may be effectively behind a structure or something like that, at least as it pertains to that residence. There's plenty of residences throughout the city that fall into that category that have a light pole or some utility pole nearby. So that's why I'm asking, just so I have an understanding of how the regulations work and what our limitations are in terms of guidelines and everything.
Do we have a copy of that in our books for the?
Yes.
What page is it on?
The locations are listed as a preference because they could theoretically come and ask or apply for a brand new pole in the right-of-way. And our authority is limited over that. We have some, but it's been significantly restricted by the federal government. So what we've tried to do in this ordinance and these design guidelines is preserve as much local authority as we can. So that's what we're looking to do.
We've been talking about this cell site, cell tower for a couple of years now, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And it is true that the government and the federal government have some guidelines. But ultimately, at the end of the day, even though the FCC and the laws that was created in 30-something years ago, I forgot what the date was, it's a long time ago. The first thing that even though the FCC, some of them took some local control from it, but our governing body of West Covina also need to understand that the first thing the FCC give to the governing body of our city is the authority to make, in terms of deciding where to put these equipments. That's one. How aesthetically, how it looks, and then also, I believe the third thing was the modifications. So at the end of the day, yes, the FCC had come up with, every year or so, they come up with new code, very restrictive, but also the Supreme Court Joanne had mentioned earlier, which is our California Supreme Court, that San Francisco, the city of San Francisco, I believe, sued and then I forgot which company it was, and it took all the way to the California Supreme Court. And basically the Supreme Court came back and said, yes, the city can aesthetically determine how, like, for example, how tall this should be, how fat this should be, how it looks, whether will this item looks nice for our city or not. So the Supreme Court, which is our California Supreme Court, did say that the city, which is us, right now we're making codes for the city, that there are certain items that we can do to help keep the city aesthetically nice, basically. We can if we choose to, let our governing body right now, we're doing the planning, is that one, we can decide to let whatever the company wants to do, just come in and install whatever they want, or we can set certain parameters in terms of where they can put these items. In city zones, we had like over 20 different type of zones throughout the cities. We can choose what zone we can allow these things or not. And then also the distance. These are things that there's certain things that we can't do, but I understand that the code and the law and then the federal government, every so many years or so, they always come up with new regulations, and what you're saying is correct. But also at the same time, even going back 30 years, they had always told us that we just need to understand that. I mean, like you said, to talk about this cell site, it's an 8-hour seminar or longer, or a lot longer. I mean, we've been going through these items for a couple of years now. It's not just yesterday or today. But it's quite interesting how I'm sitting here today, and some of the commissioners are new in terms of how and where we can place these items. Like I said, one of the things the FCC said that we can do as a governing body is the locations, and we decide where we're going to put it. Number 2 is the aesthetics, how and what size and how tall it is. Those type of items, we can actually have a discussion about it. And also modification too. There's quite a few things that the FCC had came out since then, that basically we can't, once we gave and allowed the base, there's a law that was started during the Obama administration, basically saying that they can go up 20% or 10%, I forgot how much it was, so many feet, once we give them the base. So they can go up so many feet. And city, at that point in time, if we allow those things to happen, the minute that they increase, then we will not have a say in it. But to some extent, like I said, we have the state Supreme Court to say that we can. There are things that we can do, and I'd like for you to help us guide through that, what we can do and what we cannot do. I also understand that, yes, our current code in the book, I've been sitting here all these years, 5-6 years now, for some reason, I did not know that our code right now has a 15 to 20 feet from the house. The design guideline, a lot of time we rush through these things. We have less than, sometime I swear, it was like this law and this code, it's affecting every homeowners and every property owners in the city of West Covina, but yet we spend very little time having discussions, even though every time it come up, it's like a rush through it. Oh, we have to comply to this code, so let's rush through it, let's get this go through. And every time we do that. But like I said, as a city attorney, there are things that our city can do to help the residents. Please help guide us through the process, through our new commissioner as well. Because the last 6 years when we were talking about this, none of those commissioners are sitting here. And like I said, these
So what are
codes
we voting on today?
are really hard.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for helping as well.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, so what are we voting on tonight for this item?
I was actually, if you don't mind, I apologize. I think I kind of sidetracked us with this question. I think Joanne was in the middle of the staff report, and hopefully we can get back to that, and then maybe we can ask questions later on that. I apologize for co-opting this. I certainly didn't intend to do that.
Okay, no problem. Thanks. In the other section that was removed from the, or recommended for removal from the existing design guidelines is the height, because in the current code, the height standards are already in place, which is the wireless telecommunication facilities cannot be more than 5 feet taller than the existing light pole that it's replacing, or the existing poles around the area on the same block. As far as the hierarchy is concerned, replacement of existing light poles are the most preferred. And as far as the location hierarchy is concerned, the most preferred is non-residential zones are preferable, and residential zones are less preferred. And within the non-residential zones, industrial zones, locations in industrial zones are most preferred in comparison to areas within or adjacent to commercial zones and adjacent to single-family residential zones or a daycare. Primary school or secondary school is the least preferred. And for residential zones, for areas within residential zones, the most preferred is within or adjacent to multifamily residential zones on principal arterial streets, and the least preferred location is within or adjacent to single-family residential zones or a daycare, primary school, or secondary school. And with this, we also adopted, or the staff also included photographs of what is acceptable and what is not for ministerial approval. Ministerial approvals do not have to go to Planning Commission and can just be approved by staff at the counter, as long as they comply with the single-family residential design guidelines and with the code standards. And it is done through the administrative review process. So if the antennas and are used or contained above the pole within a shroud, the vertical alignment is at a approximately 1-to-1 ratio, and the wires are enclosed and all the equipment is undergrounded, then this is something that can be approved ministerially. And per the Planning Commission's direction, previous direction, the Planning Commission wanted to see that the design would is streamlined and there is a transition from the width of the shroud to the width of the pole, and the design is tapered. If the pole is slightly smaller than the shroud, the proposed shroud, antenna shroud above it. So this is an example of an acceptable tapered design for a streamlined transition. And for discretionary approval, this is an example of what is not going to be approved ministerially, and and the discretionary approval process is a conditional use permit process that would have to be noticed and reviewed by the Planning Commission, and if appealed, would have to be reviewed by the City Council. So if the shroud is too large, there's no tapering. The RRUs is on the side and it's independent from the antenna shroud, or if the utility box or metering is above ground, then it is a conditional use permit process. And this is an example of what an antenna shroud above a pole with no transition and no tapering looks like. So this is something that would, per the draft design guidelines, this is something that would require a conditional use permit. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution updating the design guidelines for small wireless facilities in the public right-of-way. If the Planning Commission has any questions, staff and the city attorney is available to answer.
Okay, now we'll open discussion.
Chair,
I'm sorry.
it's not a
I
public
skipped
hearing,
again.
but-
Anyone in the audience would like to comment on this matter?
15 minutes? 'Cause I could be long-winded. Is that correct? 15 minutes? I'm not going to take 15 minutes. But you used two phrases that I guess came from the court hearing or from the agency, and it kind of implied, or what I inferred was that they can challenge the distance. But I also heard that the distance is being determined by the city council. I see a relationship between the distance and the aesthetics. So I'm a little confused as to whether city council does have the authority to go back to that 100 feet, or they're limited to the 1530 range that's being proposed here tonight. Because I honestly feel that it's going to impact some residential areas. I live in a arterial area, so possibly I can end up with one in front of my house. I'd like to know whether it can be adjusted to that 100 feet away from residents as opposed to the current proposal of 1530 or 1525, depending on the area. Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, I just want to clarify, and maybe I misheard this, but my understanding is that planning previously made a recommendation to City Council and had guidelines that were at 100 feet. Subsequently, the City Council adopted an ordinance that has it at 30 or 15, so that they are in line with the with the effective prohibition language, or excuse me, not falling into the trap of being an effective prohibition, I guess, if that makes any sense. I think that's the language from the case. Is that correct?
So, Commissioner, what is the question?
Okay, so my understanding is that so back in, what was it, 2018, I think, in 2019, the Planning Commission adopted guidelines saying 100 feet. Ultimately, the City Council adopted an ordinance that back in May of 2020 that has the limitation at 15 to 30 feet, depending on what the structure is.
Defer to Joanne on to answer.
That's correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure that my understanding is correct on that.
If you look in page 25 of the ordinance, the attached ordinance, under location, it says, small wireless facilities shall not be located within 15 feet from any structure used for residential purposes in the PCD1 zone.
Right, so that's the current state of the law.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, and outside of the PCD1 zone, it's 30 feet.
Got it. And then I had one quick question for staff as it pertains to the standard utility pole, not the light pole example that was going to be given ministerial review and approval. Can we flip to that slide? Okay, you see on the RRU an antenna, and then the streamlined shroud, and then below that, there's nothing requiring enclosure of wires or anything along those lines. Why is there no specificity there?
It should. It is include in the design guidelines. It does say that the wires would have to be enclosed. It was just not drawn in this standard photograph.
Okay, and that's in the proposed recommended ordinance.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Can you show me exactly where that's at?
It is attached to the resolution. If you look at
Sub D.
Page 2 of the facility design guidelines.
Right. Where is that? Where it says, if wiring cannot be contained within the pole, all wiring shall be contained within a conduit that is subdued or matches the adjacent surface and is UV protected.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yes. In my copy, that was 2 pages was skipped, so I don't.
I have a question. Is this for, so Verizon Wireless helped recommend this proposal? I see that we have an email from Verizon.
Yes, we did receive an email from Verizon Wireless in which they recommended they had a few concerns and they recommended a few language changes.
Is it possible to have them come to a meeting to present information?
They sent an email rather than coming to the meeting. But in the past, Crown Castle and other wireless facility providers have attended the meeting.
Oh, okay, that's great. I would like to make a motion that we bring this back to the next commission or the next commission meeting or the meeting after, depending on availability. But I would love to hear from Comcast or the local providers to give us some more detail on the background, because I know antenna poles is a big concern for our residents, and I think we need to make obviously a recommendation that's good and accurate.
I'm sorry, what's your motion again, Commissioner
sorry.
Gutierrez?
He wants to table.
I would like to make a motion to table this to either the next meeting or the meeting after, depending on Comcast or Verizon, or I'm sure City has contact lists, depending on their availability, to come present to us and go over some of the guidelines and because I know this is a big issue. I know in the South Hills area too, there was a big issue over there too, and I think it's important that we as a commission hear from some of the experts on this too.
I'll second that with the exceptions that I like to have some discussions. For example, for tonight, the design review, if you look at page 1, which is this one right here, everyone had this, the design review. This is basically, it's in addition to what it was written in the code as well. So if we look at A, which is, there's a bunch of other stuff on page 1, but on page 2, if you look at item A, it said facility and support equipment. A through F, it's kind of important for us to look at. These are the items practically in front of us. That's what we're approving, is the design review guidelines. And A, it's a facility and support equipment. Now, they want a 16-inch diameter. Now, all this code from A to F, we can make an adjustment to this. So does City Council. City Council also can make adjustment to these, because these are basically our code. Yeah. It's like the Bible for everyone to follow. Mm-hmm. So it's important that we look from item A through F. A basically saying that it's 16 inches in diameter. Now, 16 inch in diameter, if everyone knows, is a little bit more than 12 inches. So our telephone pole throughout the entire city that we paid good money for years ago, I believe, I don't know, to get a matching light poles or what have you, they're roughly about, I would say, 8 inches or so, and it tapered to about 4 inches or so on top. Mm-hmm. So this one right here, if we're saying that, okay, every 200 feet, some company want to put something, ultimately they can come in and change all the light pole in our community and have something else a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Now, this is something also we can actually say, okay, we only want something to match what we have existing. Because obviously they're changing one by one, or, 500 or 10 apiece, and then our light pole is no longer going to be looking like what we have today, if that happens, right? The other thing is that if we currently have a light pole or a telephone currently, they can say, well, if this pole doesn't work, we can add an addition next to it, 3 feet. So if that's the case, how is that going to look? A 16-foot diameter, which is a giant one, next to what we currently have, aesthetically pleasing right now, because the cities, we have this for a long time and we're used to it. So how is that going to look if we allow them? And every company is going to come and they're going to say, you know what, it's not going to work. Whatever you got, we're going to put new one and what have you.
Yeah, so
now let's go to B, the vertical portion, the narrow vertical portion. They say 1-to-1. But what they're saying 1-to-1 here, it is some extent, it's 1-to-1 if they were to put 16 inches. 1-to-1, right? The antenna on the top, how big is it? Is that 16 feet? How high is it? So, how high can it go? Yeah. And on top of that, yes, we might be giving them this location, this size, but there's a federal law during the Obama administration also said the federal law, once you have the base, they can go up 20%, and whatever size that fit their need or their want, they no longer need our city councils or our planning commission to decide that. That's on their side. That's a federal law. Number C, wireless and cables. Yes, some of the items that we have, it's a must be underground. That's a must be. There's no exception about that. If they want to be above ground, how big is it? These are the size that we have to determine. Is the size of the fridge small enough for us? Or is it bigger? And how many? If they decided, like each company comes in and they wanted different corners, different, I mean, someone's front yard can be stacked with all these equipment items. Instead of having administrative, yes, some of the items are administrative, but some of the items are conditional use permit. We can actually, at this point in time, say it's not allowed above ground. So aesthetically, it could be pleasing. So that this way we can prevent graffiti issues or just the look of it. I just can't imagine if someone had 50 foot of lot frontage, and every 5 or 10 feet they had one of these equipment in front of their house.
So if you're,
Look,
okay,
I'm sorry, the signage. And then the signage is not that bad because you kind of have to make it small. And then F is the construction approach, power metering and all that stuff.
So I'll amend my motion that also if we can ask the presenters to bring a little more detail in each of those subject lines and maybe provide some examples and a little more details on each of these subject lines so the commission has more information about specifically different designs and the facility and support equipment, narrow vertical alignment, antenna, and RRU, wireless cable, signage, and construction. So just a little more samples, and I'm sure the phone companies or internet companies have more information too.
Chair, if I may, Commission, of course we're happy to do as the Commission directs, but I do want to clarify what we're here for tonight. Let me start with what we're not doing tonight. We're not looking at what we call macro sites, which are the big towers. We're not looking at wireless facilities on private property. We're not even looking at the public right-of-way where they're installing their own pole. What we're looking at are what we call small wireless facilities. They're kind of the newest technology, at its largest, the size of a refrigerator, a single-side refrigerator, which seems large to us, but which is much smaller than the original technology if you think a giant tower. So we're looking at those in the public right-of-way, and we're not looking at the ordinance, which was, as the Commissioner Heng mentioned, was adopted by the council. As part of that ordinance, and as part of the FCC order which came out in 2019, cities can impose standards. So we put our ordinance with the procedures and limitations in place. Part of that ordinance, we also said that we're going to establish aesthetic standards. And we're going to do that by a resolution. So we're not looking to change the ordinance tonight. We're talking about those aesthetic standards that Commissioner Heng brought up earlier that we can't impose.
Okay.
They have to be published in advance to be enforceable, and they have to be reasonable. And of course, as I discussed earlier, they cannot prohibit or effectively prohibit. And what that means in practice, we can't put standards which are so onerous that it's too expensive for them to put it where they need to put it.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at tonight is what are those standards? What are those aesthetic standards so we can put them in advance so the wireless companies know?
Yeah, perfect. So I'll amend my motion to say we table this to the next meeting depending on the schedules of the phone to Comcast or one of the companies, and that they could go over some examples of the aesthetic aspect of what we're being asked to approve.
Thank you. And I second that motion.
Roll call.
Paulina, can you poll the commission?
Do we need to clarify or we're
I was
good?
going to say, is there going to be any discussion on this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Continue discussions right now, and then, or do you want to do roll call? We can do roll call.
it would be appropriate to do discussion before the vote.
Really, I guess I'm a bit lost in terms of what in particular we need to hear from the phone company on, or I'm kind of lost in terms of what input they're going to have. I mean, it seems to me that they're quite clear, and I think the answer to this is. Has this particular set of guidelines been implemented in any other city?
Yes.
Then I don't really see what input that we need to have from the phone company on this. I mean, ultimately, if it's a feasibility issue, as they claim, I imagine we're all going to be victims of one heck of a lawsuit down the line. But I don't see that as being reality. It seems to me that, these carriers certainly want to make everything as cheap as possible so they don't have to innovate. And I understand that. I mean, ultimately, that is their province. They have to answer to their shareholders. And quite frankly, we are in a city where there is exclusive franchise and all kinds of things going on with regard to certain things. Verizon is effectively, one of a small oligopoly that runs wireless phone services in the United States. And ultimately, I assume that they're going to have concerns about miniaturizing things. And that's fine. If they were really concerned about it, they'd be here. And they're not. So that says it all to me. So I'm in a motion to approve.
So in the letter from Verizon, it says, therefore, facilities being proposed in the public right-of-way adjacent to residential zones with single-family residences, daycares, and schools will become more common. Wouldn't you want to know how they're going to design that?
We can go over the letter. As far as the hierarchy is concerned, the hierarchy particularly means that it doesn't mean that they're not going to be allowed to build adjacent or near residential zones and single-family residence. It's just that they have to provide statements for every single line in the hierarchy, stating why they're not going to be able to meet or to put the pole in the location in the areas above that particular. Like, for instance, if they wanted to put it in residence, if they wanted to put it within or adjacent to single-family residential zones in a residential area, then they would have to submit written justifications stating why they're not able to put it in adjacent to multifamily residential areas on collector streets, why they're not able to put it in multifamily residential zones on minor arterial, and so forth. So they would have to provide the city.
Okay, so since we're talking about
written
cosmetic
justifications.
design, since we're talking about cosmetic designs, is this the only design that's available?
This is the most preferred design that's available.
So is there other designs being used in other cities?
There are other designs that does not necessarily fit within our city, and there are other designs that are worse, such as the ones photographed without the transition.
Joanne, since our commissions here has not seen some of these design, or do you know within our city or within our surrounding city that has some of these designs that we can actually drive there and take a look at it? Because ultimately tonight, we're approving a design standards that is ultimately affecting every single homeowners in the city of West Covina. And also, it's important that we actually go to some places that look at some of these items that we are proposing to do. For example, the 3 foot next to another pole or next to a lamp post. I mean, that's important to take a look at it to see how that's going to look physically, not just in pictures of what, the size, the height, and on top of it. We're not even talking about the large shroud or the R&R in antenna. How long does it have to be? How big does it have to be? I mean, 16 inches, obviously the pole, 1-to-1, is that 16 inches? How does that look? Does any one of us know what it looks like? before we approved any of these items to be systematically going throughout the entire city. Because ultimately, whatever we approve, this is what is going to be built in our city. The least that we can do is continue this, take an opportunity to take a look at what are we proposing to build, whether it's underground items, whether it's above ground items. What does it look like? All these items. Yes, I understand that we do need this. And yes, believe me, I've been going through this for the last 6 or 7 or 8 times, this type of meeting. So it's important that we take our time, take a look at it. There's a reason why City Council did not approve a project that was trying to, how long ago, Joanne, that they were trying to put 5 or so cell towers on the close to Amar and Azusa area? I'm sorry?
About a year and a half.
About a year and a half ago. There's a reason why, with this current plan, that they're not approving. And that was 15 minutes in front of someone's home, 15 or 20 feet. Because some of the PUD homes on a street, it's pretty close to their home. And some of them was putting in front of their window with the size of these items. And that's something that as a commission and as a someone that we are making rules for the entire city, we should at least take the opportunity to take a look at and where in our city has these items. And also, if it's not in West Covina, let's take a look at some close by cities. What type of design that we like and what we don't like. At least physically take a look at it. And I'm sure since we're approving this, there must be somewhere close that we have this to look at.
Commissioner, there's a couple things I need to address in that. You mentioned undergrounding, which we cannot require for small cells. The FCC's already ruled on that.
I'm not talking about the underground with the small cell. I'm sorry if I misspoke. Okay. It's the equipment. It's the equipment items that we can request to be underground.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I must have misspoke, but it's not.
You also mentioned locating within 3 feet of another pole. If they were proposing that, we would require them to put onto the existing pole, or if existing pole didn't support it, to replace that pole.
But
and
in
that
our
would
design
require
review in number A, it said, if you read it, that's what we're approving. Facility and support equipment. Facility shall be proposed and existing poles shall be proposed. A replacement light pole shall be no more than 3 feet from the existing pole location.
That is correct. So first we say, we want you to go onto an existing pole. So you're not putting a brand new pole in our right of way. So that's the first preference there. Now,
maybe we need a new one.
if their equipment weighs too much for the existing pole, we require them to replace the pole to support their equipment. So, for example, a street light. So we say you got to replace that entire street light to make sure it's engineered to be safe and will support your equipment. That is what that's referring. So in some situations that...
But we also had to comply, I'm just saying that we also had to comply to the aesthetics for our resident as well. Like, for example, the city of Beverly Hills, I actually met someone who actually only designed for the city of Beverly Hills. They require some of the item is small enough, stout enough that you can't see it. And they even said it, certain cities have certain guidelines and standards that fit their need. And I think it's beneficial for our commissions to actually take a look and see what other cities are doing. Like 100 feet, is that abnormal? Some city might have 500 feet.
No.
Some city might have more.
No, I would strongly
should
encourage you not to do 100 feet.
To actually look at these things. Why in such a rush? Because the next meeting is going to be a month from now.
Well, there's no rush.
Very beneficial.
I just want to make sure
it's beneficial for our residents and also beneficial for our new commissions to actually get to know what these things look like and what we're approving for which affect the entire city.
I would like to recall my motion and make a new motion saying that we bring this back to the next meeting, and between that time, staff provides the commission examples of current poles in our city that have that, and some design elements that the commission could look at in making a decision on the matter at the next commission meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I have that information right now. If
There's a second, so can we do a roll call?
No, I'd like to add. I also would like information. I mean, aesthetics is, you could pick something,
decent looking that everybody will be happy with. But my concern as a resident is that from cell phone towers, it's recommended not even to live within 300 to 400 feet. I mean, what are the emissions from these many towers?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Lucy. We cannot bring in the radiation portion. So,
Chair,
as a commission here,
Yeah.
we also understand that if she misspoke or what have you, we should
Can
not.
you let him answer?
Okay.
Yeah, so I do have to, because that was brought up, I just need to put into the record to be clear, the FCC does not allow us to consider the impact on human safety when it comes to RF emissions, because the FCC regulates and they issue certificates. So is my advice that this commission does not consider that, and into the record that it will not be part of the decision be made by the commission.
Thank you. And also, as a fellow commissioners, too, I'd like to add the fact that we will not make decisions on RF radiations. And also, we can only make decisions on the locations of where we can put these things. It is very clear also the aesthetics of how it looks. We can actually make decisions on that. And also the modifications, we can do some of those items. So I just wanted to add on that as a commissioners, we do understand that we're not making decisions on RF or radiations, but we are making decisions in terms of location, which means whether it's 100 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, 500 feet, those we can make decisions on away from residential area, or the size of these items. If we dictate in terms of how big this thing can be, then that's how big the company had to comply. It's not so much of sometimes what the company wants, but we also need to look at what benefits our city as well.
And Chair, just to further explain, if there is any conversation, even if it's to say this is not part of it, a carrier could sue the city. And even if we put in place good regulations for good reasons, courts have overturned on that basis, which is why I'm putting into the record that the decision can't be on that basis.
Thank you. All right, so you have a motion. Then can we do roll call, please?
I'm sorry, just wanted clarification on the motion by Commissioner Gutierrez to to continue this item to the next Planning Commission meeting and provide examples of the existing facilities in West Covina and to provide examples of possible aesthetics that can be implemented into the guidelines?
Yes.
Okay. And then the motion was seconded by Chair Hang?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Williams?
No.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yes.
Commissioner Hang?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lewis?
No.
Chair Becerra?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
Would any of the commissioners like to make a report or a comment? I think we passed that, didn't we?
I actually like to add on to something else that was done. This was done, I guess, 2 sessions ago. This is regarding the planning for our city. We had, I forgot his name was David. All the city councils and planning commissions were here.
The housing update study session.
Yes, that which is coming up. I like to add on the fact that the housing elements, it's important. It's also quite interesting, and I think also we as a commission, we're trying to understand how the state is affecting how we build homes in our city. It seems like the state is wishing or want us to build 5,300 and some home units for the next 8 years. And I wanted to add the fact that, yes, we understand that the state is wishful thought that that's what they want, but also at the same time that the landowners in the city of West Covina are all single residential or commercial homeowners. So the city don't really own any of these lands because it belongs to the residents or it belongs to commercial owners. So there are 3 parties in order to make this whole wish list, 5,300 homes work. And one of the parties is the state. The state is basically coming down on cities to say, hey, look, you guys need to work it out and come up with some type of allowing the residents, because the homeowners owns the land. However, the city, even though we don't own the land, we regulate all land use. Just like tonight, what we're doing, we're regulating all land use. We're telling whether the city or whether the company can do certain thing or cannot do certain things. And the same thing as in terms of planning for housing element is the same thing. So I just want to note to reinstate the fact that there are three parties that need to make this thing happen. One of the parties is the state. They're putting pressures on the city, and the other is that the resident. The resident may own lands, but if the city will not allow and open up, to let what the state wishes to do, then basically, even though you're a landowner, you cannot build. So it takes just like to say that it takes three parties to make this thing work. One, state wants it, 5,300 homes. And they're telling us and telling city that, hey, look, go and work at it and decide where you want to allow this 5,300 home. But yeah, at the same time, at the end of the day, it's the landowner. The landowners are homeowners, just like you and I, that we own each lot of parcels. And at the end of the day, it's up to the landowners to decide whether they want to build a residential home. And also even commercial landowners, they also need to decide whether they want to stay with a commercial or develop into single residential home. And then it won't happen if us as a city will not allow this to happen. So really, it takes three parties to make this thing happen. I mean, as sitting commissions here, and then the other night's meeting, it was quite interesting, and how we're going to spend quite a few more sessions to come up with some type of code, just like what we're doing tonight. Code to allow certain area of our city, whether it's to construct and come up with some type of number. Just because we come up with the number of 5,300 home that the state wishes that we come up with, it does not mean that these houses will be built. Hopefully it will, at least if we are, hopefully, and that ultimately at the end of the day goes back to the homeowner or the landowners, whether it's commercial landowners or single residential landowners. That applies to all the residents in the city of West Covina. Another item that I'd like to talk about, I'm sorry, I'm taking too much time here, is that regarding ADU. Now, ADU has opened up 20 years ago, and that's one of the items that the state would like us or cities to guide this thing through in terms of building more, and they figure probably it's cheaper. I guess my concern is that, okay, it's nothing that we can do right now since the state actually made it clear that we have to, right, Joanne? We have to approve when the ADU comes in?
Yes.
Okay, so when that happens, I guess my concern as a resident is, or as a city planning and sitting in the planning commission, is that, okay, we are allowing this and this has to go in and go through. Then my concern is some area of the city is that we need to revisit how we can encourage residents to build garages. If you're taking the garage and turning it into a home, so now the original home don't have a garage to park their 2 cars, or their 4 cars right now, potentially. The 2 adults living in the first home, 2 adults live in this ADU, then you potentially have 4 cars. Where do you push these cars out to the street? So if every other house built like that, then how is that helping the parking issue that I am concerned about? Now, again, we as a city cannot say you can't do the ADU. Okay, that is true. So if that is true, then how can we help alleviate some of the parking issue? And I'd like to see if we can schedule something. I'm sorry, it's a long point, but I'd like to see if we can schedule something and maybe have a study sessions and go over this. I mean, some area of the city may not need parking, but there are some area of the city that may need parking. And how can we come up with creative ideas and to work toward finding a solution instead of rubber stamping whatever the state has come up with. I don't have an ideas, but I like to work with residents, and I also like to work with our fellow commissioners to see if we can come up with something. Thank you. I think that's the two items, and ultimately the two items affect citywide code. That will be coming up. And I'm sorry, Pauline, when will the city code coming up for the 5,300 home that we have to?
Are you talking about the housing
study
element?
Yeah, the housing element, the studies that we have to. When will that happen?
Joanne, when will we be bringing back the housing element to the Planning Commission?
Before we bring the housing element up, to the Planning Commission, we would have to. Currently, our GIS staff is working on identifying areas in the city where residential can potentially be located, and once we figure out what the numbers are, then the consultant will draft up a draft housing element document that will be made available to the public and also the Planning Commission. And after that, we will go ahead and schedule meeting. Once we receive comments, we will schedule a meeting with the Planning Commission to discuss the housing element.
So that won't be until, you would say,
it wouldn't be until later this summer.
Later this summer. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next, Community Development Director's Report.
Yes, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Just a couple projects that are coming up, or items. The MLC project for the townhomes on Cameron will be brought to you before the Planning Commission June 22nd. And then also, just as June 15th is approaching and the state is opening up, City Hall now is open to the public. Fire, planning, building, code enforcement, engineering are all by appointment only. The rest of City Hall, you can come in without an appointment. Entry is through the basement level, where we do have staff that will check in members of the public. But having said that, we will also start adjusting our council meetings and our planning commission meetings. So we have remained open to the public. We will no longer be doing participation via phone starting June 15th at the city council meeting. So individuals can still email their comments. They won't be read during the meeting, but they will be made part of the official record.
Will masks be required on June 15th?
I believe they still will be, yes.
Is that it?
Then that procedure doesn't make sense, but okay.
Okay, thank you.
We have to abide by not only the county, but OSHA as well, so.
Is that it for the report?
That's it for the report, and then there's
City
no
council
pending
actions?
council actions.
Grand opening.
Oh, sorry, yes, on Thursday. Thank you, Joanne. We have Smorology that is opening up their first brick and mortar location here in West Covina. I believe they're one of the vendors at Smorgasbord in the Arts District in downtown LA. So we're very excited to welcome them to our city. And that grand opening will be this Thursday, June 10th at 11 a.m. And it's right across from Rio's Burrito on West Covina Parkway. So you guys are invited to attend.
Is that it?
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Since there's no further business to consider, this meeting is adjourned at 9:32.